I think the enjoyment of life isn't something that we should be waiting for. I think that the more we think that happiness is algorithmic for us, is the more we're going to be limited by how much we think we can derive from what's around us. And when I said that, I mean that the more that we think that enjoyment of life comes from certain events, comes from certain people, comes from certain material things that we gain, the more it's going to. I think our value is always going to be vested in what we vest value in. And if we never give ourselves a chance to vest value within ourselves, then it's always going to be outside of us in our acquisitions. And we think that, in finding those certain things and gaining material and gaining notoriety, achievement, and anything that we're going towards, we gain value, but it's not the case. We have a certain amount of value that we give to ourselves, which allows us to get that certain something. That sort of thing is really just a moniker, a sign of our value. And we sort of sometimes displace our value into those things. Because there are a lot of people who are more valuable than any achievement can give. And I think we sort of have to learn how to posit enough in ourselves to not necessarily be limited by our searches for value and not limited by our search for happiness or enjoyment. I'm recognizing a lot recently that happiness is really derived from your ability to recognize what you have in the present moment and be grateful for it and enjoy that bliss. And it's not about not recognizing the ills of the world at all. It's just recognizing that you don't have to be ill along with the world around you. I think the world definitely contains its fair share of beauty and pain, but I think it's about what you focus on, about what you allow to seep into your character that makes your world a certain way. And I don't mean that with necessarily every circumstance that we encounter. I think that part of what allows us to encounter certain circumstances is what we contrast it with. Sometimes situations are negative because you're positive, because it's not a way you find befitting, it's not a life you find befitting. And I think it's in those times that we sometimes bring our energy, we bring our mentality, our view of ourselves to a lower esteem because of our circumstance. And I think we should sort of do the opposite. I'm recognizing that when we do encounter that sort of contrast with the world and, we see a lot of negativity per se, we should use that as an opportunity to implore more gratitude in who we are and in what we have experienced and what there's still out there for us. Instead of just allowing those single instantiations of negativity, the single parts to play a whole, allowing certain negative things to play a whole totality in our whole life rather than allowing it to be a fragment. Something that you perceive, something that you see, something that you look at and let go. I think the positivity in life, the love that we share for it is really the only thing that can allow it to be lived in a free way. Recently I've been trying to take care of myself in a more well-rounded way, not necessarily just limiting it to maybe physically, not just mentally, not just spiritually, but recognizing that they all sort of work in a unison. And if we don't take the time to recognize how we're connected to ourselves, and we'll never realize how we're connected to the world around us in a positive way. I think some of us realize our connection to the world in somewhat negative ways. Like, since we invest so much negativity within who we are, so much negativity within what we experience, we tend to think that us and our experience are one. We think that the situations we encounter are representations of us when they are really just representations of themselves, just as you are. And I think when it comes to ourselves, we need to recognize that we get to choose what we represent. And all it takes is us being present enough to choose. And if I was to boil that down into what that means to me, it's genuinely not occupying your mind with things that take you away from the moment. Not allowing your mind to sort of run you rampant in cycles and circles when you're really not doing anything in the real world. I think the objective wasn't to be in our minds, but to use our minds to be here. And what that means to me is recognizing when it can come into play, when you need to recall something in your memory, when you need to figure out this solution to this. But it's not to be lived in, is what I think. We need to learn how to stop thinking and start being in a lot of ways and learn to sort of express ourselves not in reference to our thoughts, but in reference to who we are, in reference to the person reacting to the thoughts, in reference to who we want to be at times. because who we want to be is just a representation of our mind's mental image of ourselves at times, or a mental displacement from who we think we are. And then who we express ourselves to be in reference to our mind is really just what our mind thinks we are. And you can give yourself any amount of ascension, any amount of push to allow you to get to that new stage, that new height. And I think the easiest way to do that is sort of to take a step forward from the mind and recognize that, we shouldn't limit ourselves to the words that we use to describe the world around us at times. We shouldn't limit ourselves in saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, without even trying. I think a lot of us get into certain situations and we tell ourselves how they're going to be in reference to our past, in reference to who we were maybe. In a lot of ways, we carry our old emotions into new experience, and we make them representative of old experiences unknowingly. And I think in that way, we don't invite ourselves to make something new, or invite ourselves to live a life that's actually befitting of what we, I guess, desire. And, recently I've been in a sort of mode of trying to implore that gratitude and trying to, once again, not necessarily, I wouldn't even call it feeling ahead of whatever you desire. And what that means to me is bringing yourself to the level of your desires, not waiting to feel good about, the thing that you're trying to get towards. Learning how to be grateful for it now, learning how to be grateful for its acquisition, even when it's not necessarily here in physical form. And I'm realizing it's really just about how you feel in the present. It's always about how you feel now. And I think we're waiting on ourselves to enjoy life, waiting on ourselves to feel differently based on something outside of us, when that's never really been the case. It's not something outside of you that changes you. It's how you feel about that something outside of you that changes you. And if we can recognize it's always about how we vest our feelings and value into something, then it's about vesting our feelings and value into the things that we actually care about, the things that are actually abundant, the things that are actually clear. And that's why I think when you invest value within yourself, when you recognize that that's the only thing you can truly ever carry with you, then you're sort of granted an opportunity to walk with a certain grace and gratitude for everything around you. Because nothing here is permanent, everything is temporary in a way. But that's what makes it beautiful. You only get so much time to enjoy the experience of being yourself. So why are you waiting to enjoy this life that you've been given? Of course, there are circumstances that take us away from our happiness, our enjoyment. But it's about recognizing those circumstances and overcoming them. I think that's the only objective, the only thing that we can do when faced with that sort of negativity from the world. And if we don't give ourselves that sort of opportunity, then we're sort of left grasping at straws. What's the point of even having an obstacle if you don't want to get over it? Just so you could be stuck and not enjoy the rest of your life? I don't really think so. I think it is about our continual progression. And recognizing that gratitude and things we can be grateful for and thankful for can take so many forms other than what we've been taught. You don't have to just be grateful when, you get something or something goes your way. You can be grateful for waking up. You can be grateful for even being able to think about how you want to wake up or how you want to look at this. You can be grateful for even having a perspective. I think we have to recognize how far we've come individually as people into what we are today, into who we are today, and recognize how in our continual growth of awareness, how much power we're sort of left with at our disposal. And I think it's when we don't know how to wield it or don't know how to use it in our own benefit that it truly takes away from us, because it becomes used in ways that we are taught rather than ways that we are actually aligned with. And when I say that, I mean, one thing's not going to work for everyone. I think even when I reference the meditative process, like meditation as doing something that makes you feel most like yourself, everyone is likely to have something a little bit different. But it's not about exploring that difference. It's about exploring the individuality. It's about recognizing your authenticity is sort of the key to your strength, and recognizing that who you are is beyond comparison. Who your experience is sort of beyond comparison as well. So your enjoyment of life shouldn't be referenced to other people's references of enjoyment. It should only be referenced to yours. And I think once we give ourselves that liberty, then we sort of choose when we want to be happy, in a sense. Not all the time, but as soon as we're actually present and able enough to recognize we can interject our own thoughts, our own feelings into a situation and allow it to be painted with the colors of that feeling. You know, a lot of life I feel like is about alignment, not necessarily in action, but in feeling. If we learn to feel in accordance to what we want, then we're going to act in accordance to what we want. Because a lot of times the reason that we don't act in accordance to what we want is because we don't feel like it. It's because we're waiting on something to tell us to feel a certain way. And that's why I think it's sort of unbefitting to wait to enjoy life. It's like we're waiting on ourselves to see something beautiful, when the beautiful thing is always in front of our eyes and we just have to acknowledge it. Maybe the beautiful thing's even behind your eyes, as in you. You know, you just need to acknowledge yourself as well. I think we don't ever give ourselves a chance to sort of have an audience, to give ourselves audience, and we're always going to be feeling like we have to perform, that we have to do this, is that, and the other in order to enjoy life, when that's never really been the case. If you think back to when you were a kid, your enjoyment didn't come from everyone around you. Not necessarily. It didn't come from you expecting this to be a certain way, that to be a certain way. You just took what you could get. Whatever came to your life was a sort of gift, and it felt like a gift, and it felt up. It felt good, at least for some of us, because we were in the present. Because we weren't occupying ourselves with thoughts about, is this going to lead to this? Or am I really as negative as I think? Or am I really this way? Or I am this way? Or, you know, abstractions from our ability to actually see the way that we are. If you want to know whether or not you're impatient, it's not about asking others, really. Maybe it is. It's also about you being present enough to see that for yourself. It's always about the ear that you give to yourself that allows you to listen to yourself and others. I think if we can't listen to ourselves, we can't listen to others. If we can't see ourselves, we can't see others sometimes as well. Because if we don't, we're always going to be clouded with the bias that is us. And if we're unable to see that, we won't see the ways that we're taking away from ourselves in terms of our perspective and our view of other people and our view of the world around us. In that way, our enjoyment is constantly being limited by the way we limit ourselves. Telling ourselves, I can't be happy unless this happens, or feeling like that. Oh, I can't be happy because my goal is still this far away. Why should you wait towards the end of your goal to be happy? You know, and I always think back to this analogy, this, I don't know, thought exercise that I do for myself that I thought of one time, which was, do you love yourself? Why not? And why is that a reason for you not to love yourself? I feel like any answer we give ourselves is not sufficient enough reason to not really love ourselves, to not give ourselves something for being here. And I think even if we have expressed ourselves negatively, even if we have done stuff that's unbefitting of ourselves, of course in a non-grand immoral way, then we have to give ourselves an opportunity to see our ugliness. Because that's the only chance we're ever going to get to see our beauty. You know, I think a lot of us do certain things and we think we're trapped in who we were. We think that ferments our identity and keeps it stuck. You may be painted with that forever. Sure, that may be true, but that's just a result of your action. But that doesn't mean that you have to carry some type of ill feeling about yourself and ill feeling about your entire life with you for the rest of your life. It's about your healing. It's about your grace. It's about your forgiveness to a certain extent, you know, and I think it's about giving that to yourself with a certain amount of intention, especially when it comes to the small things. I can't really speak for the grand things. I don't really know how to handle some of y'all. But when it comes to the small things that we sort of get on ourselves about, maybe our conduct when we were children, maybe our conduct now, maybe certain events in our life where we feel like, you know, we don't really have control. It's about recognizing that we don't have to control everything. You just have to control yourself. And that doesn't go for just your actions, but also your perspectives. Recognizing that sometimes we look at things in a negative way because we are thinking that we are negative people. And In that way, we sort of punish ourselves by not enjoying life. We punish ourselves by seeing the world in a negative way and wanting to see it in a positive one. Oh, the world's so negative. I just wish it was good. We're sort of enforcing to ourselves that what currently is not capable of allowing us to be enjoyed, allowing us to enjoy our experience. And I think part of that is just us thinking that it's algorithmic, thinking that there are certain things in life that are supposed to bring you happiness. And of course, for each individual, these things are present, but they can be present in more things than we allow. It's just about how you allow it to be found. Who we are is more easily expressed than it is thought. And if we only limit ourselves to our thoughts about what we might enjoy, then we're only going to be able to enjoy everything that we have in the past, or everything we think we might enjoy, rather than actually going out there and enjoying the life that's here and seeing what else is left for us in this one chance that we get to be ourselves.